cerebrum and cerebellum. We left off on the limbic. To think of kind of an integrative system. It's more a a functional integration as opposed to a structural integration. As we look at our limbic system, it's typically going to be associated with strong emotions and with taking short-term memories and creating long-term memories. You can probably remember those periods or those points of time in your life when you were really angry or really happy, when you had really strong emotions activating your limbic system. Those really strong emotions have a habit of taking those memories and sending them into your consciousness, into your long-term memory. This is one of the reasons why we as human beings are so predisposed to hanging on to things that make us angry. We have trouble letting go of those things that really irritate us because we remember them really well, because those things that really irritate us activate our limbic system and help take that short memory, etch it into our long-term memory. Now, as we look at our limbic system, there are multiple prominent components, some of which include the cingulate gyrus. As we look at the cingulate, it's going to be directly over the corpus callosum within the frontal lobe. It's going to be directly over this corpus callosum. We're also going to have the hippocampus, named for its resemblance to a seahorse, and that's going to be located within the temporal lobes. When we think of the hippocampus, I want you to think of specifically taking short-term memory and converting it into long-term memory. That's the primary function of our hippocampus. When we look at the amygdala, that amygdala is rostral to the hippocampus, so it's going to be slightly anterior to the hippocampus, and our amygdala right next to the hippocampus is associated primarily with strong emotion activation. So as we look at this limbic system, we have the left cerebral hemisphere limbic system, we have the right hemisphere limbic system, and as we look at these parts of the limbic system, there's a feedback loop or a circular feedback loop between the components, so that once one part of the limbic system gets activated, it activates the other part of the limbic system. It's kind of a positive feedback loop where we take those strong emotions, turn them into strong memories give us strong emotions, and those strong emotions give us more strong memories. Some of the things that our limbic system primarily focus on with emotion is going to be gratification or aversion. When we think of gratification, I want you to think of positive feelings. When we think of aversion, I want you to think of negative feelings, fear and sorrow. We're also going to have deep, buried within the cerebrum of the brain, some regions of gray matter surrounded by white matter. These regions of gray matter are known as the basal nuclei. When I would have a brain in lab that I could teach from that had a frontal slice through it or coronal slice through it, I would always describe the basal nuclei as the pizza slices in the brain, because to me they kind of look like pizza slices. Now, as we look at our basal nuclei, there's multiple regions, multiple nuclei that have separate functions. Some of these nuclei are going to be associated with motor control. Some of these nuclei are associated with memory functions. Like most things in the brain, there are multiple functions and multiple purposes to a single given structure. As we look at the basal nuclei are made up overwhelmingly of the lentiform nucleus. Our lentiform nucleus has the putamen and then the globulus patellis, or as I like to tell my students in lab, it's the pizza slice. And these parts of the basal nuclei are primarily going to be associated with the motor regulation, two specific parts of the basal nuclei. When an individual develops Parkinson's disease, there's going to be degradation of the motor neurons within, of the neurons within the basal nuclei. That's part of the regions of the brain that are heavily hit. We have a review question, and then I believe we are done with this presentation. The gray matter of the cerebrum forms a surface layer called the blank, and the deeper masses are called blank, surrounded by white matter. We have nuclei tracts, cortex nuclei, cortex medulla, medulla midbrain, and medulla nerves. What do we call the gray matter on the surface? They're buried in cerebellum, or buried in the cerebrum. We're down to about 15 seconds. Make sure you get your answers in. Guys, gals, as we look at the gray matter on the surface of the brain, the gray matter on the surface of the cerebrum is the cerebral cortex, known as the cerebral cortex. Regions of gray matter that are buried deep within the cerebrum and surrounded by white matter are the nuclei, one of which we just talked about on this slide, a region of gray matter buried deep in the white matter, basal nuclei, or a nuclei. So, generally speaking, let's review this because we need to spend some time camping this. Cell bodies of neurons. They're grouped together in the peripheral nervous system. We call it a ganglion. So in lab, you learned about the sympathetic chain ganglion this week. Each of those bulges of the sympathetic ganglion trunk or sympathetic chain ganglion is a region with lots of cell bodies of neurons grouped together in the peripheral nervous system. And that is it for the cerebrum and cerebellum. We're going to start on integrated